In 1937, John D. Rockefeller's estate was valued at $1.4 billion. Today, 6 generations later, his descendants control hundreds of billions in wealth. Meanwhile, 90% of wealthy families lose their fortunes by the 3rd generation. If you're earning more money than most people will see in a lifetime, but you still wake up wondering whether your wealth will survive the next market crash, you're not alone. Despite having substantial assets, you might secretly ask yourself, am I building something that lasts? Or am I just one mistake away from losing it all? Here's what the Rockefellers understood that other wealthy families missed. Institutions are the only players in the financial world who must survive. They don't get to fail, pivot, or disappear. They are structurally obligated to endure through every crisis, every war, every economic cycle. Today, I'm going to show you the 3-step elegant system that they used to stack, shield, and scale their wealth, transforming earned income into a self-funding wealth engine that compounds without interruption and buys back the one asset your portfolio can never replace: your time. This is about replacing performance chasing with structure and certainty, building what lasts instead of what looks impressive on paper. So let me tell you a story about someone. Let's call him David. He's a serial entrepreneur. He sold his company for $58 million at age 44. By every external measure, he'd achieved extraordinary success. But David couldn't sleep. He'd lie awake at 3 a.m. checking market futures, calculating worst case scenarios. What if there's another 2008? What if I make the wrong investment? What if my kids don't understand money the way I do? David had fallen into what I call the success trap. The more he accumulated, the more vulnerable he felt. First, he thought $10 million would bring him security, then $25 million, then $50 million. The goalpost kept moving. Does that sound familiar? Here's what David didn't realize. Despite having $50 million plus in assets, he had virtually no true liquidity, meaning capital he could actually access without penalty, without loss, and without depending on market conditions. His wealth was scattered across stocks, bonds, real estate, and private equity, all subject to market volatility, liquidity constraints, and tax complications. When COVID hit in March 2020, David watched his net worth drop 35% in 3 weeks. He felt completely powerless, watching numbers on a screen determine his family's financial future. This is exactly what the Rockefellers understood generations ago. They built systems that allowed institutional families to deploy capital during crisis and to acquire assets at discounts and emerge stronger from every downturn. The difference wasn't intelligence or luck. It was system design. David was thinking like an individual when he needed to think like an institution. Here's the first belief that needs to shift. Your current approach, no matter how sophisticated it appears, isn't built for survival. When your financial advisor looks at your portfolio, they see asset allocation. Stocks, bonds, real estate, alternatives. They're optimizing for returns within accepted risk parameters. But when institutions design capital structure, they think fundamentally differently. They think in terms of liquidity, permanence, the ability to keep capital safe, stable, and always accessible no matter what the markets are doing. Let me show you exactly how this works. The emerging pattern that we see over and over again is that financial institutions maintain 40 to 60% of their total assets in what we call true liquidity. And true liquidity, to be considered true liquidity, it's got to meet 4 criteria simultaneously. It's got to be able to hold its value when markets crash. It isn't tied to the stock market fluctuations. It's accessible without tax penalties or major loss, and it can be leveraged without stopping its growth. Think about this. JP Morgan Chase doesn't keep 100% of their assets in the stock market. Neither does Goldman Sachs. Neither does Berkshire Hathaway. They maintain massive reserves of stable liquid capital. Why? Because they understand something your advisor doesn't. Survival comes before multiplication. The Rockefeller approach pioneered this institutional thinking. While other wealthy families chased market returns, the Rockefellers built unshakable foundations using dividend-paying, cash-value life insurance policies. Not the kind your insurance agent tried to sell you, but institutionally structured policies designed for cash accumulation, not death benefits. These policies provided guaranteed growth, tax advantages, and most importantly, they could be leveraged at favorable rates without interrupting the compounding. When the 1929 crash devastated other fortunes, what did the Rockefellers do? They deployed their stable capital reserves to acquire distressed assets at pennies on the dollar. Here's what most high earners miss. You think the goal is maximizing returns, but institutions know the real goal is maximizing options. Stable capital gives you options when everyone else faces constraints. Your advisor is selling you products designed for growth, but institutions build systems designed for permanence first, growth second. That's why they endure through every cycle while individual portfolios get crushed. Because institutions are the only players in the financial world who must survive. They think survival first, growth second. Individuals do the opposite. Now let me shift the second belief that's keeping you trapped. Effective wealth management doesn't require complexity. It requires the right structure. Most successful entrepreneurs think institutional grade wealth strategy must be complicated. Multiple accounts, exotic instruments, teams of specialists managing different pieces. But here's what institutions actually do. They use an elegantly simple 3-step system. Stack, shield, scale. Step 1, stack. Build your war chest. Instead of scattering capital across volatile assets, institutions first establish a war chest. Stable capital that compounds predictably under your control. For the Rockefellers, this was dividend-paying, cash value life insurance policies, structured for cash accumulation. These provided guaranteed growth, tax deferral, and leverageability, all in one simple contract. Most people put money in banks earning minimal returns or markets hoping for growth while risking massive losses. Institutions put capital in vehicles that grow consistently, that provide tax advantages and can be leveraged at favorable rates. Step 2, shield. Leverage without liquidation. Here's where most wealthy people make a critical mistake. When they want to acquire real estate or invest in opportunities, they sell existing assets. They interrupt compounding. Institutions never do this. They borrow against their war chest while keeping the original capital fully growing and compounding. They borrow against their war chest and deploy capital strategically while allowing their original capital to continue growing and compounding uninterrupted, like using the equity in a house to buy another property without ever selling the first one. The Rockefellers perfected this approach. When acquiring assets, they didn't liquidate their reserves. They used their policies as collateral, borrowed at favorable rates, and acquired income-producing assets while their original capital kept compounding. This creates what I call double compounding, like earning interest on your reserves while also earning income on what those reserves let you buy. Your war chest compounds while your acquired assets produce cash flow and appreciate. Step 3, scale. Reinvest for velocity. The final step creates true wealth acceleration. Instead of spending cash flow from acquired assets, you systematically reinvest it. Some pays down policy loans, restoring borrowing capacity. Some acquires additional income-producing assets. This creates velocity. Your system constantly cycles capital between your war chest and new acquisitions, each cycle increasing your wealth engine's productive capacity. The beauty is in the systematic simplicity. Stack capital in a stable base. Shield it by borrowing against it instead of liquidating. Scale by reinvesting cash flow into more productive assets. 6 generations of Rockefellers have used this exact approach, not because it was complex, but because it was elegantly structured and systematically repeatable. This brings me to my third belief shift. You don't need teams of specialists to implement institutional strategy. The financial services industry has convinced high earners that effective wealth management requires complexity. Family offices, multiple advisors, exotic instruments, armies of specialists. But here's the truth. The core of institutional wealth strategy can be implemented with 3 simple components. Component 1, A properly structured cash value life insurance policy. Not the cash value life insurance policy your insurance agent pitched. A dividend-paying cash value life insurance policy from a mutual company, structured specifically for maximizing cash accumulation. This becomes your institutional grade liquidity base, guaranteed growth, tax advantages, and leverageability, all in one simple contract. Component 2, a systematic asset acquisition process. You don't need investment committees or complex analysis. You need clear criteria for income-producing assets, predictable cash flow, favorable financing terms, appreciation potential. Real estate, private lending, established businesses. The specific asset class matters less than the systematic approach. Simply a predetermined allocation system for cash flow. A percentage to loan repayment. Component 3, a reinvestment protocol. Simply a predetermined allocation system for cash flow. A percentage to loan repayment, a percentage to new acquisitions, a percentage to living expenses. That's what I call systemized autonomy, meaning you stay in control. But the system runs like clockwork once it's set up. 3 components operating in systematic harmony, not 20 different financial products, not teams charging percentage fees to manage complexity you don't need. The Rockefellers didn't become generationally wealthy because they had the most sophisticated investments. They became generationally wealthy because they had the most systematic approach to capital structure. You already have everything needed to implement this approach. You don't need $100 million. You don't need a family office. You need to start structuring capital like an institution instead of accumulating assets like an individual. Now, you may be wondering, how does this all work in practice? That's exactly why I created the war chest principle. I'm Christopher Hemmert, and I founded this system after working with high-income entrepreneurs who were doing all the right things, yet still felt financially vulnerable. What I realized was they didn't need more performance. They needed a system designed to last. The war chest principle exists to help people like you think like an institution, so you can finally reclaim your time, protect your capital, and create something that survives you. If you want to go deeper, I've prepared a private briefing for you at warchestprinciple.com. It walks through exactly how to structure a capital system like we've discussed today, one that mirrors what institutions do. You'll also receive a free PDF that outlines how the wealthiest families and financial institutions view earned versus passive income, and how they structure for time, control, and tax efficiency. Most importantly, you'll understand why this approach works regardless of market conditions, interest rate changes, or economic cycles. The wealthy don't just earn more money, they structure money differently. They think in terms of systems, not assets, permanence, not performance. Go to warchestprinciple.com and access your private briefing now. So let me bring this full circle with a critical truth. The reason the Rockefellers are still wealthy after 6 generations isn't superior intelligence, better market timing, or starting with more capital. It's because they understood one fundamental principle. If you want to build something that survives, you mirror what's already been proven. And what's been proven is this: institutions are the only entities that must survive every crisis. They don't get to fail, pivot, or disappear. So they build systems that endure. We've covered 3 belief shifts today. First, your current approach, no matter how sophisticated, isn't built for institutional permanence. It's built for individual performance chasing. Second, you're not the problem. Your model is. Complexity isn't sophistication. Structure is sophistication. Third, you don't need teams or complex tools. You need the right system implemented systematically. The war chest principle is simply the systematization of how institutions actually structure capital. Stack your wealth in a stable compounding base. Shield it by leveraging instead of liquidating. Scale by reinvesting cash flow into additional productive assets. Right now, your wealth structure is either moving toward institutional permanence or it's trapped in the traditional model of accumulate and hope. The traditional model puts you at the mercy of markets, tax changes, and economic volatility. The institutional model puts you in control of your financial destiny. The Rockefellers didn't wait for perfect market conditions. They didn't wait until they had more capital. They started building institutional structure immediately and let systematic compounding amplify their advantage over decades. You have the same opportunity today. Continue playing by the rules that cause 90% of wealthy families to lose their fortunes, or Adopt a system that's preserved wealth through 6 generations of institutional thinking. You've earned your income. Now it's time to earn your freedom by thinking bigger, structuring smarter, and protecting the one thing you can't get back, your time. I hope this message blesses you between now and the next one. Take care. God bless.